Most people would agree that they want to create as much impact as possible. Unfortunately, many of the old channels are for generating awareness or breaking down. However, podcast and podcasting continues to evolve, with the likes of YouTube aggressively joining the ranks of podcast directories. You can make the case that podcasts are this generation's college radio station, and podcasters are the new firegivers. Podcasters host the guests who will become next year's media darlings. If you're looking for someone who can give you the lay of the land from a podcast guest viewpoint, we have just the expert for you. Today, we're talking with Jessica Rhodes. Jessica is the founder of Interview Connections, the world's first and leading podcast booking agency. She helps clients monetize their visibility. So buckle up and keep your hands inside the vehicle at all times. This episode's going to be filled with hidden wonders. Jessica, welcome to the Subscription Maker Podcast.
Zachary, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So let's start with the hard stuff first. How do you select the right podcast for a particular client?
Yeah, so the first step when we're working with a client to book them on podcasts, we always want to get really clear on what their goals are for podcast guesting, because knowing what they want to get out of being a guest on podcasts is first, and then learning about their business, their areas of expertise, their story, their interests, that's all, and their target audience, that's all going to inform what we call your criteria for what types of shows would be a good fit. So for example, if a business coach wants to use podcast guesting to get more clients, and as a business coach, maybe their focus is on teaching business owners how to improve their organic marketing, and they focus on, let's say, local business owners, then we would say, okay, business podcasts, talking to local brick and mortar business owners that typically focus marketing experts. That would be a good type of podcast. And then from there, it's being very clear about quality. So looking for shows that are established, have 20 or more episodes, they're consistently publishing. We look at who the host of the show is. Would this be somebody that it would be a valuable connection? So these are some of the factors that we look at when deciding what types of podcasts would be a good match.
Okay, so let's back up a little. How do you define a great podcast guest?
So a great podcast guest is somebody that, number one, wants to give value first. This is a medium where the guest is not being paid, the host is typically not being paid, and two people are coming together to provide value to the listeners. They genuinely want to serve and to provide value and create a great piece of content. So, number one, the best podcast guests are ones that have a mindset of service and genuinely want to provide value to the audience. A great podcast guest, let's just talk tactically, skills wise, they're excellent at storytelling. They know their topic, they know their message. One little skill that I think is really important in the best podcast guest, and it's a great tip for anyone who wants to be a podcast guest, is when you give your answer, know when to stop talking. Because a lot of podcast guests, they ramble on and on and on, but they don't know when to put a period at the end of their sentence. So great podcast guests give an excellent answer. They share stories and they know when to end their sentence and let the host interject or ask another question.
What are the challenges entrepreneurs and business people in general face when they want to become a podcast guest?
One of the biggest challenges that people face when they want to be a podcast guest, I ask this whenever we host a podcast guesting masterclass every month. And I always ask, why are you not yet being a guest on podcasts? And the most common answer that I hear when I ask that question is, well, there's a couple things. I didn't even know this was a thing. Let's assume everyone knows it's a thing for this question. Or they just say, I don't even know how to get started. I want to be a guest, but I just don't even know, what do I do first? How do I get started? So it's quite truly, they just don't know what the roadmap is. They don't know what are those steps to take in order to get started.
Okay. Would you give us a couple of tips that we can use today to increase our odds of booking more guest spots?
Yes, absolutely. So here, if you resonated with that last answer and are feeling like, okay, I don't know how to get started, here are some tips for you. So, number one, I mean, what I talked about before, get some clarity on your goals and your target audience and why you want to be a guest. If you could just write that down, even in a notepad, just get some clarity on why you want to be a guest. That's really going to help. And then number two, make a podcast one sheet. Open up a Google Doc and just write out your bio. So your bio should be about 2 to 250 words written in third person. So it's essentially what the host will read as an introduction to your episode. So write a bio, which is essentially your introduction on a podcast, and then write some interview topics. What are some topics that you can be interviewed about? Your topic should be speaking directly to your target audience's biggest interests, biggest pain points, what they want to learn about. Your topic should be relatively specific so that they're not just general, like online business advice, but what's something a little bit more specific to your area of expertise. And then write some suggested questions. That makes the host job that much easier if you actually give them questions that they can ask and read word for word. So by putting together your bio, your topics, and your questions, that's the best thing to do to get started, because then your next step is actually reaching out to podcast hosts and getting yourself booked. And you can do that a few different ways. You can do it yourself. You can research and find podcasts and reach out to the hosts and say, I'd love to be on your show. And here's my one sheet. Shows what I can talk about. You could have an assistant do it, or you can work with an agency like ours, Interview Connections. You can work with an agency, provide them with your messaging, and then they'll go out and get you booked. So, but that one sheet is the first thing you need in place, whether you're booking yourself or working with a company to book you.
So what kind of time frame are we looking at? I mean, how long does it take?
Yeah. So podcast guesting is a long-term strategy. It is more often than not what I would call a slow burn. So when we're working with a client, we do onboarding in month one. So we're laying that groundwork. We're making your one sheet. We're strategizing and creating the criteria for what would make a good podcast for you. And then we start pitching in month two. So once you've laid that groundwork, again, whether you're working with us or you're doing this on your own, you do need to spend a little bit of time laying that foundation. And then you start pitching and reaching out to hosts. Now, our booking team gets about 35% of our bookings actually come from a follow-up, meaning we've sent a pitch and then we follow up on that pitch to even 4 or 5 times. So sometimes you have to, if you're in sales, the money's in the follow-up. So following up a couple of times is what's going to result in a booking. So our booking agents are pitching, following up. And then once we get a reply from a host, we connect our client. So once you get that reply from the host and you get a yes, I'd love to have you on the show, the next step is to actually schedule the recording. So Zachary and I connected last week. Schedule the recording for today. And then, Zachary will publish this interview sometime in the future. Sometimes hosts will publish it the next week. Sometimes it'll be 2 to 3 months out, depending on how many interviews they have already recorded that they are scheduling to be released. So because podcasts are usually a pre-recorded medium, when you do an interview with a host, it may not go live for sometimes up to a couple of months after it's recorded. So you just want to manage your expectations around when you'll see the effects of podcast guesting, because it does take some time to start the process, to get booked, to record, and then to have those interviews go live.
Okay, the reason I want to go back a little bit. You said that your booking people are booking. But my question is, are they pitching the same topic, the same offer, Are they doing that, or are they changing things each time they make the connection?
So with an individual client, we are using there's one sheet that our clients have for themselves. So when we're pitching podcast hosts, we're pitching dozens of different hosts, we're always using that same one sheet and then just making sure that the pitch is tailored to whoever we're reaching out to. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Perfect.
The reason I ask about time frame is that a lot of people will give up if they don't get a response in a couple of hours. If it's just not right away, they're done. They think, or if it takes a couple of weeks, they're thinking, well, hey, maybe I'm doing something wrong and I should just give up until I can find somebody else who can do it for me. And I like to ask people what time frame that we should be looking at, so we can basically get to a point where people can say, okay, yeah, I can back off. I can ease up on myself. I don't have to be so aggressive because I know this is going to take some time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does take patience. This is a long-term strategy. So if you're just wanting to try it out for a month and see what happens, I would put if that's really what you want to do, I would put that energy into something else, because podcast guesting is a strategy that the best results and the best success comes from long-term commitment.
Jessica, would you tell us a bit about Interview Connections and how you went from virtual assistants to founding the first podcast booking agency?
I would love to. So in 2013, when I became a mom, had my first child, I wanted to be a stay at home mom. I was working in a nonprofit and I wanted to be home with my baby, who's now 11 years old. And my dad, who is a business coach, he's had an online business since I was 13 years old. So it's been a long time. And when I told him and my mom that I wanted to be home with the baby, he recommended that I become a virtual assistant, which, if you're not familiar with virtual assistants, that's basically, they're a self employed entrepreneur that provides services to business owners. So I started out as a virtual assistant. My dad was my first client. I was supporting him in his online business, doing admin work, client support, sales work. And in the first few months of working with him in his business as an assistant, he asked me to book him as a guest on podcasts and to also find people for him to interview on his podcast, which is called Dream Business Radio. So I got to work. I have a background in door to door canvassing and fundraising for a nonprofit. So I just applied my skill set from knocking on doors to emailing podcast hosts. So I started pitching my dad to podcast hosts, and right away, podcast hosts were very surprised. They had never been pitched before. I was pitching a lot of hosts, and all of them had said, I have never had somebody pitch a guest to me before. At the time, there was only a few 100,000 podcasts online. Now there's over 3 million. And people were just connecting directly. They were inviting people to be on their show. It was just a direct thing. There weren't booking agents. And a few months in, my son was about 3 months old. I wanted to take my business to the next level. I wanted to expand and scale my income. So I decided to niche down. I was, again, doing some other VA work. And I decided to niche down and found interviewconnections.com and met with a lot of different podcast hosts and business owners, and really just surveyed the community of, would this be a service that would be valuable? Because again, nobody was offering this service. So I asked around a lot to find out, and everyone said, yes, absolutely. I think this is a great idea. More and more people are starting podcasts. Nobody's offering guest booking as a service. So I think this would be great. So I launched Interview Connections in the fall of 2013 and struck up some really great partnerships with podcast hosts who had pretty good size audiences. That really helped me get visibility to ideal clients. And the business grew quite quickly, very fast. In the first couple of years, we hit 6 figures our first full year. And then the company doubled in revenue for many years after that. And now we have full-time employees locally. We've worked with over 800 clients. We've booked over 30,000 podcast interviews over the last 11 years. So that's the story of Interview Connections.
Okay, I want you to put your marketing hat on and tell me what makes your agency stand out from the other competitors. I mean, I know you were the first,
Yeah.
but what makes you more competitive today?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot. Number one, we were the first, and I do think that is important because when you, and this is what I tell people who ask me this question, is when you're looking for a company to get you connected with podcasts, you want to work with a company that has the most connections with podcasts. So somebody that started a business 2 years ago, they're 9 years behind us in terms of in building a network of podcasts who know, like, and trust them. So that's number one. We have an incredibly large and deep database of podcast hosts that know us, that like us, that trust us. And we have criteria for who we work with. We don't just take on any client. So podcast hosts know that if we bring them a guest, they're going to be well trained. They're going to have the right mindset. They're going to be a great guest. So our reputation in the marketplace is excellent. We also have full-time employees, which is really important because when you're working with an online service provider, a lot of times you'll see a company with a great website, their founder is excellent at sales and marketing, but then once you become a client, the experience working with the team does not match what you perceived it to be through their marketing. There's contract workers, there's a revolving door of virtual assistants that are doing your, work for you. So we've invested in full-time local employees with benefits. We have a really excellent employee retention. So when a client works with us, they have really great team members that are serving them. And truly, our values are what stand apart the most. Just like in any agency, there's a lot of companies, and I fully believe that you as an entrepreneur need to choose the company that you feel most in alignment with. We're a woman-owned company. We're part LGBTQ owned and operated. We really believe in working with business owners and entrepreneurs that are having a positive impact on the world. So, typically our ideal clients, they connect with that. They want to work with, that type of company. So I think that's kind of one of the biggest things that makes us stand apart.
How does the decision making process work with your company? I mean, a lot of people coming out of the great pause, they launch these wonderful ideas, but then 3 or 4 years later, now that they have to grow their businesses, growth is stalled, and now they got to actually be a real business. They need to make some big decisions. So how does that work with your company?
Yeah. So I have a business partner. I founded the company on my own, and my first full-time employee, her name is Margie Feldhune. She became co-owner, which is a really unique part of my entrepreneurial journey, is that I went from being a founder and CEO to then bringing on a 50% partner. And so Margie is the CEO, and we really complement each other in terms of her being a visionary, me being excellent at implementation. And we can kind of, go in and out of those types of roles. But we're always told we are such an anomaly in terms of business partnerships because we are just very in sync. We have excellent communication. We did a program called Landmark, which is a very intense personal development program. So we went through Landmark, which gave us a lot of tools into how to communicate. And one tip that we actually got from one of our clients, they were a business partnership, husband wife couple actually in business together, and they gave us this tip our first year as partners. And they said, when there is a disagreement or when there's something that you're not seeing eye to eye on, you rate your strength of feeling on a scale of 1 to 10. So let's say you disagree on, should we run Facebook ads or not? One person says, yes, we should. And the other person says, no, we shouldn't do paid ads. Well, you say, well, what's your strength of feeling? And very rarely will you have the same strength of feeling. So every single time that Margie and I have disagreed on something, which quite frankly is not that often, we're very much on the same page about a lot of stuff. But if we ever disagree on something, we rate our strength of feeling. And whoever has a higher strength of feeling wins. So if someone's like, I am 10 out of 10, I feel very strongly about this. And the other one's like, I disagree, but I don't feel that strongly. Like I'm 7 out of 10. Okay, we'll go your way. And so that's kind of how it works. And we have our own lanes. There are, like, as the CEO, Margie makes the decisions on when and who gets a wage increase. She doesn't check with me every single time. She'll run it by me and stuff, but I'm like, yep, that's your lane. I trust you. And then there's things in sales and marketing, like sending out emails and text broadcasts and things like that. We collaborate often, but it's also a little bit more my lane to just implement that stuff. So we have our defined lanes and we trust each other a lot.
Now, do you have a kitchen cabinet or a private advisory board?
I love this question. So, yeah, I think every entrepreneur naturally, even if they don't define it this way, kind of has that advisory board of trusted people who know all of the dirty secrets, all the ins and outs, the things that not everyone knows, but that you can go to. So, Margie and I, we're in a mastermind group together. We're currently working with Melanie Ann Layer in her Alpha Femme Experience Next program. So, I like to think of everyone in that program is kind of on our advisory board this year because when you're in a mastermind program, there's so much trust. Everything that's shared in that group stays in that group. So we've shared a lot with Melanie, our coach, and the women in that community. So that's definitely one of our, advisory board members. We also have dear friends that we've worked with who are either, vendors of ours, like, marketing agency that we're a client of. The CEO of that company knows a ton about our company and where we're going. And so we can, talk with her and get advice from her. And then, of course, my dad, for sure, is somebody that I talk to often because he's been with me on this business journey since day one. So, I'll often call him up and just share with him what's going on. And I also have some best friends that I've met through business that I know I can always call up and just say, okay, here's what I'm going through. Here's what I'm dealing with. Like, can you be a sounding board? Yeah.
So, did your dad teach you entrepreneurship as a kid?
Not directly. And it's funny because I was actually having this conversation with my husband last night. We go out to dinner every week, and we were just talking about how with kids, they learn so much more just from you sharing and being in conversation and not telling them. So my dad never taught, like, he started his business when I was, a teenager. So there was never a direct teaching about entrepreneurship, but being around it, seeing how he got started. It was just something that was in my purview in my life. I think leading by example is one of the best ways to lead. And I think that's the best way people learn is just by example. Cause funny enough, like I feel like when I'm just taught something like go do this, I mean, it depends what it is, but learning by example, learning by watching, I think is so much more effective. So that's how I kind of picked up on my parents definitely taught me work ethic and the power of hard work. And I think I got my scrappiness from them because there were some financially hard times in my family growing up. And so I was babysitting by the age of 12, like had a job as soon as I was old enough. So I learned scrappiness from them and always doing whatever it takes.
Yeah, the reason I ask that is because I like to ask people questions like that. I had a guest on once who told me that she definitely taught her kids entrepreneurship at 5 years old. At her 5 year old was helping her put together media kits, and of course she paid her. And but that was I just thought that was great.
I love
Having
that.
having
My
said that, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I'm very excited because my kids are getting to the age where I'm like, ooh, like there's some things I can have them do, like very simple tasks. Can you just go through and click all these buttons? So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that's what getting an allowance is for, right? You do
Exactly.
your chores, put together this media kit, and you're good to go. Now, what advice would you give young or youth entrepreneurs about podcasting or about being in a VA?
Well, I mean, first, be willing to do whatever it takes. I think this is good advice for, young entrepreneurs, kids, and I think people could take could use this as advice even when they're older too. But do whatever it takes. When I started my business, when I became a virtual assistant, my last position, I was working in a nonprofit. I was at the director level, so I had kind of worked my way up in that organization. And then when I moved over to join this whole world of online entrepreneurship, I became a virtual assistant, and I was like literally the first task that my dad paid me to do was to check the links on his website. So for $15 an hour as a contractor, I was checking links and I'm like, this is not what I went to college for. But that's how I got started. And it was that led to one thing that led to another. And now I'm founder of a multi seven figure company, the leader in the industry. But it started because I was humble enough to check links on a website, even though I was like, this is not exactly what I thought I signed up for when I said I was going to start a business. But when you are humble and willing to do whatever it takes to get started, you can go incredible places.
Okay, so let's bring you back to today. Um, would you talk a bit about monetizing your visibility?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So, monetizing your visibility can mean a lot of different things depending on your business model, what your goals are, and what that looks like. But there is so many different ways that you can monetize your visibility. So, for some people, monetizing your visibility is getting leads and sales. You get visible, you monetize that through people finding you through that visibility, coming to your website, booking a call, joining your email list, and purchasing what you're selling. So, monetizing your visibility can be very direct and have immediate gratification. Also, monetizing your visibility can look like you building up your thought leadership and your platform. So, there may be people that hear you on a podcast today that don't join your email list and buy your product or service right now, but they follow you. Maybe they see you again on another podcast and they listen to you then. It might take years for somebody who finds you on a podcast today to pay you money. And so it's a long term play. But building a strong business and a successful business means you are constantly building awareness to new people who don't yet know who you are. And some are going to become your client today. Some are going to become a client in a couple of years. Some will send a link to an interview you did to a friend, and you will never know that that friend found you through somebody hearing you on a podcast. Like I've had consultation calls with people that are like, I have no idea how I found you. But someone told me about you, and it's just the more visible you are, the more you will attract leads and sales and clients who come to you. They get attracted to you, that you magnetize them towards you, and they're like, I don't even know how I found you, but somehow I found you. So that's really what being visible, that's how you monetize it.
Okay, this may sound simple to you, but what are the big challenges to monetizing your visibility? Is it just not knowing that you can, or giving up too early? I mean, what are those challenges?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges is the idea that you need to do it long term. I think so many people want instant gratification. They want to see the results now. And if they don't see the clients now, they stop doing it. And they constantly start and stop different strategies. When in reality, there's the book, 3 Feet from Gold. You could stop because you don't think it's working. But if you had just kept going 1 more month, 2 more months, 3 more months, you would have seen an influx of leads and clients. One of my favorite stories is my client, Dr. Jolie Hamilton. She's worked with us since 2020. This is something she's committed to long term. Her first year of podcast guesting was foundation laying, it was honing her message, it was getting really clear on her audience. And so she didn't see the direct return on investment that first year. So if she could have quit and said, doesn't work. 2 months into her second year with us, she was seeing $80,000 months in her business. So, had she quit after 1 year, she wouldn't have seen the huge spike in growth and success in her business. So, that's one of the big challenges, is just sticking with it, because it's hard to commit to something long term when you don't see the immediate gratification. But that is one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give, is to commit long term. Another challenge is not having clarity on what your marketing funnel looks like. And I don't mean some complicated evergreen webinar funnel, like nothing complicated, but just what is that journey from somebody hearing about you for the first time to becoming your client? How do they hear about you? How do they get onto your email list? How do they book a call with you? What's your follow up sequence look like? Like, what is that journey from somebody hearing about you to becoming your client? When that journey is not clear, when the links on your website don't work, when your emails are going to spam. Like there's little things. Be a secret shopper in your own business. Go through the funnel of, okay, I heard about me. And then I go to my LinkedIn. Is my LinkedIn optimized? Am I on top of my connection requests? Like all of these little things. And I see this with very successful business owners who don't pay attention to their online presence. So if you're going to be investing in getting visible, look at your online presence and make sure that if somebody finds you through that visibility, there is a seamless path to them becoming your client.
Okay, so let's use a sports metaphor. Wayne Gretzky used to say we need to skate to where the puck will be, not where it is now. So, are there any emerging trends in monetizing visibility that you're seeing now that we can basically build for in the future?
Yeah, I love that quote. I hadn't heard that quote before, but that's a great one. That reminds me of the lesson in entrepreneurship that you need to invest for where you're going, not for where you are, where you've been. So in terms of emerging trends, I mean, podcasting is continues to be an emerging trend. So I think anyone that's not leveraging the podcast medium needs to get on it because it's not going anywhere. Um, Really focusing on your relationships with podcast hosts, taking the time. I know different podcast hosts have different ways of doing things. One thing I talk about a lot when people are starting to get on podcasts is to be prepared for pre-production calls. Not everyone likes them, and that's totally fine. There's not a right or wrong way to do it, but more and more podcast hosts are, kind of being a little bit more stringent with who they're bringing on the show. So as you're getting interviewed on podcasts into 2024 in the future, be prepared to really take it seriously. Prepare for your interviews, connect with the host, promote your episodes. I think that's really important right now.
O- Okay, so in line with what you just said, how do you get big personalities to make the small changes necessary to get the ball rolling? I mean, you just talked about people not taking podcasting serious. So how do you get them on board so they realize just how or just what a big opportunity this is?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is success. I forget who this quote is by, but success leaves clues. So, one of the biggest tactic strategy tools that we use when coaching our clients and helping them to adapt and to make those small changes that will create big results is showing how it's already worked for other people. So, if somebody is like, let's just say, for example, we have a client that's being resistant towards going on small to medium sized shows. They think it all has to be big shows. Well, I have dozens of case studies with clients who have seen a huge return on investment through small to medium sized shows. So I think just showing examples and so like proof, like the track record, I think that's the biggest thing that we can do. And then just to offer a piece of advice for anyone that's, a coach or like, how do I do this with my clients? Confidence is everything. People, especially big personalities, they need to feel that you are owning your authority and that you're confident and you know what you're talking about. So, if I have a call with a client that's kind of being difficult, they're like, I don't know, like, I don't know if I want to do it this way. I'm like, I have been doing this for 11 years. This is my expertise. I'm the leader in this industry. So if you are choosing not to listen to me, that's on you, but this is how it's going to work. Like, this is how to have success with this strategy. Own that. Be confident. If they are hiring you to coach them on something, you need to show that kind of boss level energy so that they listen to you.
As we start to wrap up, Jessica, is there anything you wish more people would ask you?
You've asked such excellent questions. Like you've really covered the range from tips for podcast guests, my story. Um, I really cannot think of any questions that I wish people asked me. I'm a responder on the human design. I'm a generator, so I love just answering whatever questions people ask. So I rarely have a question that I'm like, oh, I wish they asked this because whatever someone asks is perfect.
Okay, so let's come at it a different way. What would you want people to ask you so that you let them know that you're the real deal? I mean, because you're okay, so you're at a dinner party and people are saying, okay, so you're a podcast booker. What's that mean? And and you give them this answer where you basically let them know I'm the real deal.
Yeah,
I should be listened to.
I think if somebody were to ask, and I've already voluntarily gave this information, but how many interviews have you booked? How many clients have you worked with? Because when I say we've worked with over 800 clients, we've booked over 30,000 interviews, that usually has people go, "Oh, I can see that you didn't start this yesterday."
That'll work. Is there anything new on the horizon that you feel comfortable telling us about?
Ooh, that's a great question. I can't say that there's anything crazy new to share. I'm excited to be doing a lot more podcast interviews as a guest. Being in business for 11 years, there's times where I've been more behind the scenes and kind of operating the company, doing the sales and marketing. And so I'm excited to do a lot more interviews myself this year. So that's really exciting. And, speaking to other people's communities and coaching programs and things like that. So think what's exciting is just me being out there more as a guest expert myself. So if you want to have me on your show, feel free to reach out.
What's the best way to follow you on social media?
So LinkedIn is a place that I am most active on for the business. So Jessica Rhodes, as you can see here on the video, LinkedIn is a great place. And then we're pretty active on Instagram, Interview Connections on Instagram. I post videos, quick tips and things like that. So LinkedIn and Instagram are the two places. And then I'm breaking my rule and I'm giving a third place, but we do have a free Facebook group called Guest Expert Profit Lab. I do weekly live trainings in the Facebook group on Wednesday afternoons. So if you want to join that group, again, it's totally free. Interviewconnections.com/group will take you right there. So truly any of those three social media platforms you can find us on.
Jessica, thank you for joining us on the Subscription Maker podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Too many people work way too hard and earn too little from their online businesses. You don't have to be one of them. And that's a wrap.